Okay, welcome back to another episode of Rotten Reviews. On this episode, I'm going to take a look at the 2001 John Carpenter film Ghosts of Mars. Um, Let me just say straight off the bat that this movie is rotten, and it's rotten in my opinion as well. The tomato meter has it at a 21% critics and an audience score of 24%. I'm surprised that these numbers are as high as they are. To me, this deserves like a 5% on each of those. This is John Carpenter's perhaps his rock bottom, so to speak, of his career. I don't know if he ever came back from this. I don't care to find out. I am kind of curious what was going through his mind when he made this, when he allowed this to actually hit the theater, because rock bottom in a drug or alcohol way, maybe. I'm not sure what happened, but this is really bad. It's so bad that you might actually, if you get a hold of this for free, of course, you might actually try to drink most of a six-pack or finish a good amount of a bong before you go through this. It might actually become a comedy. It might be laugh out loud funny. I know that if you're completely sober, this just isn't that funny. You probably wish it was. But anyway, if you have the guts to watch this, expect to ask yourself just what the hell happened to John Carpenter. Now, the main star of this movie, well, you can argue which one was the main star. You had Natasha Henstridge, which I'm not good pronouncing her name. She was better known in 1995's Species, which is also a really rotten sci-fi horror sex film of type, where she plays an alien that's sent to Earth to use her sex appeal, her sexy body to impregnate humans with alien DNA, and the results are pretty damn disgusting. That's maybe the subject of another video itself, but anyway, that's what she's most known for, and certainly that was her claim to fame before she was put into this Carpenter movie. So in Ghosts of Mars, we have a premise where humans have colonized Mars, and Mars has become some sort of matriarchal society. It's a government controlled by women, and the movie begins with a security officer, Natasha's security officer, who is telling the story of what happened to her and her, I don't know, her fellow security officers in the form of flashbacks. And the movie starts off going right into a flashback that actually tells the main story. And then inside of that flashback, that's the main story, we go into secondary and tertiary flashbacks. At one point, we are actually into a flashback that's inside a flashback that's in a flashback in another flashback. And no, I'm not exaggerating. This is a lot of how the story is told. It's also got Ice Cube, who is completely miscast in this role. This is supposed to be like a sci-fi horror movie, and Ice Cube is not known for sci-fi or horror. It's also kind of an action movie, and Ice Cube has failed at all his action movie attempts. So he's a complete miscast in this. I don't know what he's doing in it. In fact, when I saw the trailer for this film, when it showed Ice Cube in it, I immediately knew this would be really bad, because he's doing corny, one-line quip action guy type of stuff in a horror sci-fi movie. It's completely bizarre. Even in the trailer, it looks completely bizarre. But anyway, in the movie, it's Ice Cube. And also we have a very young Jason Statham. Jason Statham, before anybody knew who he was, before the Transporter film, for example. And he's like, his character's like, he just plays an action, a disposable action hero secondary character whose main goal during the whole movie is just to try to get the main character, Natasha's character, in a room somewhere where he can have sex with her. Literally, that's what his main goal in the movie is, other than to survive with the others during the action sequences. It is completely bizarre. The whole premise of the movie is bizarre because the premise is basically mining operations on Mars have disturbed ancient ghosts or demon ghosts of Mars's, ancient extinct races. You don't get any material on, what kind of ancient civilizations used to exist on Mars, but you know that their ghosts are coming back now, and they're actually, their ghosts are possessing people's bodies and turning them into a combination of a zombie and a demon-possessed killer. It is completely bizarre. In any case, we'll get further into it as I go right into the Rotten reviews. 5 stars. I love this movie. It is really great fun. Wow. 4 stars. I love this movie, but I see its flaws. The concept is very cool. Matriarch society on Mars. Disturbed spiritual entity is awoken and possesses a local mining town. Full of cheese, though. Worth at least one watch for any true Carpenter fan. I don't get where they're coming from on this. There's nothing redeemable about this. Basically, John Carpenter has ripped off every other idea he's had. Everything from from New York to vampire movies to possession to just crazy over-the-top limb decapitations, face painted villains that don't speak English and growl. It's so crazy. None of it makes any sense. It's like John Carpenter was completely high when he made this and nobody could stop him. I just can't figure this out. It doesn't come across as funny. It doesn't come across as scary. It doesn't come across as a sci-fi action. Even the action fails. The plot makes no sense. The action sequences make no sense. Almost every single aspect of this is a plot hole. It doesn't have any kind of logic. It falls apart upon, a 12-year-old child's questions would pull this entire thing apart. And again, it's like flashback inside flashback inside flashback. You would think this could be funny, but somehow it isn't. It is very bizarre. Very bizarre. I'm going to continue down. I'll try to get through these 4 and 5 star reviews. I don't know where they're coming from, but I will read them. 5 stars. It's one of my favorite movies, which I did find using Boxy software. Graphics, better you will not find. Special effects, super. And the plot is not bad, especially the actors. I am pleased with Natasha Henstridge. Well, I can see that you're pleased with Natasha Henstridge. Teenage boys would be pleased with her. That's what she was known for. But again, unless you're like a Chinese rice farmer and you've never been to the big city before, this isn't exactly a 5-star movie. I don't know. I think a lot of these 5-star and 4-star reviews are coming from people in third world countries that find videos that we would see in the Walmart bargain bin to be exciting blockbuster movies, because that's how low your tastes have to be to put 4 or 5 stars on this. I'm not trying to insult anybody. I'm just saying these 4 and 5 stars, I just don't understand why they're here. This is that bad. And I'm a John Carpenter fan. I can appreciate his weirdness. I can appreciate a movie like Vampires that a lot of other people don't like. But this is so far beneath that it's like John Carpenter literally just shit in his own bed, to put it nicely. 3.5 stars. This film had good actors, good music, and a good story. Definitely something different and well put together. The only downfall to this movie is the ending, because it leaves wanting to know what happened. If you finish this movie, you're going to want to know. You're going to want to know what the hell happened, because you're going to ask yourself first, what the hell did I just watch? Because that's how bad it is. I will say one thing. Right off the bat, at the opening of this movie, there is a distinct John Carpenter soundtrack. I liked that. I liked the actual music. It had a nice mood. It, you know, if it had started like the opening music promised, with this science fiction train on Mars and this cool John Carpenter soundtrack starting, then this might have been an awesome movie. But this, no, that's where it all went downhill. After you get past the cool opening music and the sci-fi train on Mars, every second after that is a ride straight into oblivion, the oblivion of the very bottom of the Walmart VHS bargain bin from back in the day, where, you know, you would dig down through those VHS tapes and let them spill all over the floor in the hope that there would be some treasure down there somewhere for $2. This one wouldn't even be a treasure. You might find it in that bin. It wouldn't be any treasure. It's that bad. 2 stars. As an action movie, it is passable. I disagree. However, there is nothing scary about this movie. The cheesy acting and the dopey antagonists make this movie seem like more of a joke than anything. I agree. As someone who likes sci-fi original films because they are intentionally bad, this movie didn't disappoint. I'd say give it a watch and don't expect an Oscar-level film. Oh, you're not doing this justice on this review. Even for a sci-fi movie film, this is bad. You would be disappointed because there's not even anything to laugh at. You know, it's so bad it should be good is a thing with a lot of movies, but this doesn't even make that cut. That's how messed up this is. 1 star. This was a huge disappointment. I grew up on John Carpenter movies, and this movie is unforgivable. I think he retired after this. It says it all. You know, I don't know if he retired after this, but he should have been shamed out of Hollywood after this. This was bad. 3 stars. John Carpenter's second-to-last theatrical film is an entertaining sci-fi remake of his early classic film, Assault on Precinct 13. And I'll pause here. Yes, it rips off Assault on Precinct 13. It rips off almost every other movie he's done. It rips off different elements from it and craps on all of them. Really, this is that bad. Continuing, but is sadly nowhere as thrilling or as original as his best films. The film's story was originally going to be a third Snake Plissken film titled Escape from Mars, with the exact same story and Plissken in the Desolation Williams role, but with the box office failure of Escape from LA, that plan was scrapped. Instead, this film features a terraformed Mars run by a woman. Okay, now that I learned something new, if that's true. If the Escape from LA movie with Kurt Russell had been successful, then this was supposed to be one called Escape from Mars. Now it starts to make sense to me. This would seem to be the case. It feels right. But it doesn't explain why John Carpenter allowed this to be released. He should have just like burned all this footage. But somehow, maybe he needed the paycheck. I don't understand. This got into the theater. 1.5 stars. By far Carpenter's weakest film. It's sad that this is what he semi-went out on. You see the style and the attempt to make some badasses out of these characters, but it's all rather hollow and ineffective. I saw one review sum it up amusingly. One of the first images you see in the film is an autopilot sign flashing, and it seems to be a sign of how this was made. Yeah, autopilot after the driver's passed out somewhere on the floor. 1.5 stars. Nothing redeeming about this movie. Poor story, writing, acting, and special effects. Exactly, I agree. Nothing redeeming. Now I will give you my star assessment. I say 0.5 star. Literally 0.5 star. Not 1 star, not 1.5 stars, not like 1 star just for the effort. No, 0.5 star. It's that bad. 1 star. I wanted to watch this as a laugh with a friend. It's so boring there was only silence from us. Yeah, exactly. You go into this thinking this is so bad that it's got to be funny. I'll start laughing. So maybe you even drink a few beers. Again, I say you might have to do a whole 6-pack before anything in here is funny. It just doesn't even come across as funny. You know, it's not even up to that. That's why I say 0.5 star. 2 stars. The whole movie looked like it was done on one shitty set. The same scenery kept happening the entire movie. Not only that, but it was kind of boring for what it was supposed to be. I agree. It was one sound stage. There's no question. It was all within one small section of a warehouse. That was obvious. It doesn't matter who you are. You can see this. It's evident. 1.5 stars. The minute the main villain opens his mouth, it immediately extinguishes any hope of this film being decent. The only redeeming quality about it is that it's laughably bad, so you may get some enjoyment out of it. No, it's not laughably bad. No, 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 it just doesn't land that way. I wish it did, but it doesn't. That's why this will probably never reach cult status of any type, because it's not even laughably bad. And what they're saying about the villain, well, all the villains are pretty much like zombies inhabited by evil Martian spirits. They don't speak English, and the villain, he kind of comes out and growls, kind of half growls some unintelligible gibberish to his minions to get them to attack the characters, and it is completely bizarre, but it's not funny. It's like bizarre and ridiculous, but it's not funny. I mean, you wish it would be, but it's just not. I don't know how it could not be, but it's just not. I still haven't figured out. I haven't figured out why it's not laughably bad. It's just not. 2.5 stars. It's all been done before. A bunch of loonies together on a mission on Mars, confronted with an evil outre of demons, cheesy actors, shitty script, endless pointless action. Yeah, but I'll say even the action, as pointless as it wasn't even action. It was really crap. It was like action that's lower than a B movie on the Sci-Fi Channel. It's hard to even quantify. You have to see it to know how bad it is. 2 stars. Along with The Ward, this may be John Carpenter's weakest movie. It feels really cheap, and with stock action music, bland indoor sets, and a lot of standing around talking. While the cast actually does manage to make it somewhat entertaining, it's just a bland movie. It's not an embarrassing movie on its own, but compared to the rest of Carpenter's body of work, it just looks really bad. Yeah, it's completely embarrassing. Even for Ice-T, this is completely embarrassing. I haven't seen any interviews with him that he talked about this movie, but I bet it's out there. He's probably like ashamed to even think about his role in this movie. It is so damn bad. 5 stars. This is a heavily subjective rating. The movie is flawed, but I loved it as a teenager and still do. The soundtrack is an industrial metal masterpiece. Well, I'll give you the industrial metal soundtrack. It's pretty awesome. It's obviously John Carpenter right from the get-go. It sounds good. But the movie is just flawed, even as a teenager. No, unless you're a teenager in like a Romanian village, where again, a B movie on Sci-Fi Channel is a masterpiece, then no, I don't get it. 2.5 stars. Mars is crazy. Ice Cube is there. 2 stars. This is a John Carpenter movie. Well, it's not one of his best, not by a long shot. A Martian virus infects the Earth colonists and makes them go like Viking berserker cray-cray. It's told in flashback, and sometimes there's flashbacks and flashbacks, and then yet more again. You forget where you are in all of the tizzy, and most of the dialogue is delivered as if everyone on screen thought they were Clint Eastwood in a Sergio Leone Western. It gets a little monotonous. It's a peanut butter without jelly sandwich. No, it's a lot worse than that. Again, there's no Martian virus. These are ghosts. That's why it's called Ghosts of Mars. There's no attempt at saying this is a virus that's infecting people on Mars. No, this is even more ridiculous. Ghosts came out of like the Martian soil, out of Martian ruins that we never quite see, and they're carried on the wind, and when the wind sweeps over you, the ghosts get inside you and turn you into a zombie that's under the control of a head zombie. Yeah, it's completely cray-cray, as the reviewer said. 3 stars. Much like Ghost Ship, I've seen this movie as a kid and thought it was great, but then back then I was a kid. Now, about 8 years later, it's not as good, but it's still quite enjoyable. The story follows a crew that are on a mission to transfer a criminal from one place to another. Unfortunately, the place from which they have to pick up the criminal, James, is infested with ghosts that have been released from the ground. What follows is a campy, cliched, but very fun movie. Wow, again, I say, what part of the world do you live in? Because in America, we call this half a star. When we call it anything. 3 stars. I may not be the correct person to believe in when asked, should I watch Ghosts of Mars? Because I totally like this kind of low budget but well made skitty with dark atmospheres and a bit of action. Well, maybe Ghost of Mars is a bunch of trashy things put together, but they are put together pretty well. And come on, we are not talking about Russian literature of the 19th century, so watch it and we are cool. Maybe you're like a relative of John Carpenter, because I don't get where you're coming from. 3 stars. This film doesn't deserve to be at 21%. Yeah, it deserves to be a lot lower. I say 5%. Continuing, granted it's not one of the classic Carpenter films, but it's still a fun experience. A weird hybrid of other Carpenter films, Assault and Escape from New York. Cops Hentridge and Jason Statham are part of a team that travel to a remote mining colony to pick up dangerous criminal Ice Cube, only to find dangerous forces await. This film has a heavy metal soundtrack that fits, some half-decent action sequences, and some nice gore and violence. Well, calling Ice Cube a dangerous criminal in this movie, he's no more dangerous than like I don't know, like a 3-card Monte player that you find on a New York sidewalk back in the day. He's not dangerous at all. He's not even dangerous up to the level of a street thug dangerous. It's completely laughable. No, there's no dangerous criminals or dangerous anything else. Even the zombies, whatever they are, the miners that are inhabited by the ghosts of Mars. They're not believably terrifying. They're kind of like zombies that choose to show up when it's only convenient for the plot. They wield weapons and hit you on the head with rubber mallets and rubber swords, and it's obvious that they're doing so. Even the blood looks fake. It's completely not laughable, but not serious at the same time. No, nothing criminal or criminally dangerous about this whatsoever. 1.5 stars. Super mediocre, confusing, and stupid plot, with Ghosts on Mars creating a legion of Kiss rejects. Yes, exactly. These demon-inhabited zombies look like, yeah, Kiss, the rock group Kiss. Their leader looks like he should be in the rock group Kiss with worse makeup, and the legion of zombies he commands, they look like fanboys of the group Kiss that they were in a contest to appear with the band, and they're the rejects that didn't make the grade to be allowed backstage to meet the band. Yeah, Kiss rejects. Very astute observation, very accurate. And dear God, every time they appear, you have to hear some horrible instrumental arena rock metal. It doesn't add to the immersion at all. The whole movie is boring and forgettable. John Carpenter didn't put a lot of effort into this one at all. There just wasn't enough going on to make this entertaining and good. Yeah, it's not even laugh out loud funny. It's not even dumb enough to be funny. 1.5 star. To understand how bad this movie is, you have to go back and watch The Thing by John Carpenter, which was unbelievably good and still very watchable today. I'm not sure what John Carpenter was trying to accomplish in this movie, unless it was employment for Ice-T and Natasha Henstridge. This is just a bad movie with a confused story, muddled plot, and really poor special effects. I couldn't even bring myself to give it 2 stars. Yeah, well, you gave it 1.5. I say that's 1 star too high. This is half a star. 1.5 stars. John Carpenter is usually adept at these kind of stories, but Ghosts of Mars fails due to surprisingly vapid action, poor acting script, and a dearth of his usual wit. Half a star. The first movie I ever gave a 0 to before it was released, and you know what? I stand behind that decision. Yeah, 0, well, 0 is like, if you make it a 0, then you can't even talk about it because it doesn't exist. Half a star, I agree. 2.5 stars. Filled with confusing plot points and bad acting from Ice Cube, but it's simply never boring, just a little bland and meh from one of the masters of horror. Wow, you're really trying to help him out, aren't you? Half a star, only watchable because it's so rubbish. There's no excuse for such an easy film to make with such a cast to be this bad, horrendous acting, poor effects, literally laughable. I don't understand why so many known names were involved in this mess. Yeah, I agree. 1.5 stars. A truly awful film in almost every way. Bad acting, bad dialogue, lazy amateurish fight scenes, a confusing flashback heavy script, cheap looking sets. Yeah, it's like a dropout from film school could have done better. It's that bad. 1.5 stars. Poorly made from a rotten script. It noisily thrums along while no one cares. Irritating soundtrack. Very hard to finish this. 3 stars. Decent movie. The plot is so-so. The script is bad. Giving the characters dialogue that attempts to turn them into comedic smartass action heroes, but it's actually quite annoying. But the style and direction are great, and the action is pretty cool and flawless. It feels like a better, less stylish version of House of the Dead on Mars. While not Carpenter's best by far, it's certainly not his worst. Wow, really? This is not Carpenter's worst? What is his worst? No, this is his worst. 3 stars. I don't know where you live, but it's not in the US of A. 4 stars. The visuals and drama make the film about the heaviest, hottest planet being possessed by poltergeists, but the story feels like watered down Event Horizon. Um, that's a whole lot of bad comparison there. Event Horizon? This doesn't deserve to be like some of the dust in the airlock of the ghost ship on Event Horizon. It's bad. 1 star. Terrible, less than B grade crap. Certainly not up to John Carpenter's usual style. Yeah, it's less than B grade. 0.5 star. 1.5 stars. Total shame this movie wasn't better. It feels like a terrible 80s made movie. Even worse because it was filmed in the early 2000s. It has an interesting enough concept. Too bad the execution is so awful. Yeah, I'll agree with that. Forgetting it was made in 2001, if I just looked at this and said, when did I think this was made? I would have said 1987, 1988, sometime not too long after, the first Escape from New York in the 80s. No, this was made in 2001, but it looks as bad as, it looks worse than Escape from New York in effects. I don't know if that was deliberate, but it's a complete fail. Wow. 5 stars. This movie is awesome. No, I'm sorry. 2.5 stars. I've seen a lot worse. Then again, I have also seen a lot better. If you've seen a lot worse, it wasn't this. It wasn't an actual Hollywood movie. 1.5 stars. I remembered liking this more than I did on a second watch. No one has any chemistry, and the likes of Pam Grier and Joanna Cassidy go wasted. The ever labyrinthine flashbacks are an intriguing structure, and the effects are pretty good when you realize they used food coloring on an entire quarry to make their Mars set. Yeah, it was blood made out of food coloring. Who knows what else? Yeah, Pam Grier was in it, but Pam Grier's far more enjoyable in one of those old blaxploitation films of the 70s. Go watch any of those first. Again, Joanna Cassidy too. I don't know what he was thinking. Anybody that says the effects are pretty good, these effects are worse than the Escape from New York effects. They look like they were made before then in the 80s. It's a complete fail. 4 stars. This is one I can remember going to the theater as a freshman in high school. As a longtime fan of John Carpenter and oddly Ice Cube, the combination was enough for teenage Denham to count down the days until it released at one of the 2 theaters in Baton Rouge. Now there are 6 theaters thanks to the rapid growth in our population after Katrina. Synopsis: with its $28 million budget, Carpenter and co-screenwriter Larry Lulkus bring us a depressed Mars that is cut off from planet Earth, and this reviewer continues to give his 4-star review. Okay, if that's true, it has a $28 million budget. I don't know where the money went. Maybe it just went into John Carpenter's pocket, and the other $200 went into the budget of the movie. It's $28 million. Somebody needs to look into where the money went. 2 stars. Yeah, it's old, so what? This is a prime example of B writing. Wooden acting sets the go from great to cheesy. The plot provides the thimble of interest, just enough to complete the assignment. The creep guy was pretty cool. No, it's not even B-level writing. Sorry. 2.5 stars. John Carpenter brings us Halloween. Now he brings us this crap. Yeah, but it isn't any 2.5 stars. This is 0.5 star. 0.5 star. John Carpenter hits rock bottom with this sci-fi horror film set on Mars. The plot isn't so much about ghosts as much as it is about possession zombies. It is also horribly paced and badly edited. The makeup effects and model shots look decent, but the acting is weak, and it just drags far too often in too many places. It is barely even a fun, bad movie to watch. I'd recommend that you avoid this one, especially if you'd like to remember the quality of John Carpenter in the 70s and 80s. Again, it's like this reviewer didn't realize this was made in 2001. This wasn't made in the early 80s. Yeah, it looks like it was. If you went and found like some of those 80s horror sci-fi movies that are really bad, like Lower Than Extra, like what is it called? I can't think of the name of it now. There was one movie that had like it was a sci-fi horror movie, and it had like actors from Joni and Chachi in it. I'm sure sci-fi fans know what it is. Even that is far superior to this. This looks like it was filmed on a lower budget during that same time period, early 80s, and a really low budget. But this was filmed in 2001, and I think even this reviewer doesn't realize that. Take a look at the credits, guy. 1 star, not English. I'll read just a few more to do some punishment. 2.5 stars. The Night of the Martian Ghosts. Ghosts of Mars is a 2001 sci-fi horror film by director John Carpenter. The movie was a commercial flop, and I agree it's not Carpenter's best work, but I still enjoyed it. I usually disagree with the critics. It wasn't a total wreck. I think the monsters didn't really apply, and the story was maybe a bit too simple and even has an Assault on Precinct 13 feeling to it. What I did like was the strong female cast. Okay, yeah, I only agree that, yeah, it gives you feelings from Assault on Precinct 13, Escape from New York, and some other things thrown in that also don't work. It's a disaster. 2.5 stars. Natasha Henstridge and Jason Statham are sent to Mars to transport a prisoner Ice Cube. Okay, another synopsis. The film just never quite worked. The general idea was okay, but it just never took off or went in the ways it should have in either a horror or comedy or action. Well, this movie spent so much time exploring how deep you could go on the flashbacks. Until I saw this movie, I didn't know anybody could seriously try a flashback within a flashback within a flashback inside yet another flashback. It's like an exercise in flashbacks, I guess. 3 stars. John Carpenter is back with a crazy-ass flick once again. This time the story takes place on Mars, and believe me, there will be blood as much as on Earth. The film is nuts but creatively interesting. No, it's creatively dead and bankrupt. 1.5 stars. I'm a fan of John Carpenter, so this is tough to say. This movie lacks atmosphere more than Mars itself. When a horror movie lacks something, it usually compensates with gore, and gore there is. Personally, the only time I find gore scary is when it's running for president. I gave up on this after an hour. Yeah, there's gore, but the gore looks completely fake. It looks like, food dye gore. That's how dumb it looks. When you talk about gore, you think about The Thing. John Carpenter certainly had gore in The Thing. It was done with practical effects. It was fantastic. It was disgusting. It scared the hell out of you. This is just like gore that somebody would take food dye and taco sauce and make that into something. This is really bad. 3 stars. Between early 2000 and late summer 2001, 3 movies about the planet Mars opened in theaters nationwide. Ghosts of Mars, the sci-fi horror flick that I'm reviewing, happened to be the last one to come out. The other 2 were Mission to Mars and Red Planet. Both box office duds. Okay, I'm going to stop him there. Comparing this to Mission to Mars or Red Planet, wow, it is completely... This is like comparing a low-budget 1982 movie with, Mission to Mars or Red Planet. This is ridiculous. It's not even in the same league. Now, I don't know what the budget differences were here, but other than the fact that the setting is Mars, these movies have these other 2 movies, Mission to Mars and Red Planet, have no connection in any way whatsoever to this movie. So right off the bat, I'm not even going to continue with this review. It's offensive to even compare this to those other two films. 3 stars. Although the cinematography is lacking, the cast of enjoyable actors, Cube Greer and the chick from Species, and inspired set designs make this a fun, entertaining B-movie. No, the set designs, there were no designs. It's all like in the corner of a warehouse with a bunch of haze. Ridiculous. 4 star or 3.5 stars. Ghosts of Mars 2001. John Carpenter is giving us a nice zombie style science fiction movie, except it's not nice. I disagree. 1.5 stars. Despite being considered one of John Carpenter's far lesser films, the fact that he teamed up with Ice Cube for a story set on Mars was more than enough to captivate me. Wow, completely the opposite. I disagree. When I saw Ice Cube in the trailer for this, I already knew this was going to be bad. It doesn't work in this. He didn't even work in, Triple X, for example. He's not an action star. He was completely miscast. 4.5 stars. Ghosts of Mars is an entertaining and original sci-fi flick. I cannot say I have seen something quite like it. John Carpenter has delivered another great and very underrated movie. I'm not even going to continue down that road. 5 stars. The last thing I'm going to read is going to be 5 stars. Okay, unlike most people who trash this film, I am one who liked the movie a lot. I agree that some of the acting could have been better, but the story of the movie was amazing and it sets a great scene for a part 2 that could blow away part 1. They could take it on to even a part 3 if they do it right. And also some of the acting was perfect, seen as if you put yourself in their shoes. The only parts the actors didn't get a few times was the fear parts, because I know I would have crapped my pants. Okay, I'm sorry, that's the last one I had to review. I don't know, again, I don't know what part of the world they're a citizen of. I'm betting it's not the United States. There couldn't be a sequel to this. There shouldn't be. I guess you could make a comedy. You could somebody could make a fan edit of this and maybe turn it into a comedy. Maybe. But again, it just doesn't hit as a comedy either. That's what I find so weird about this movie. That's why I say it deserves half a star. If I thought this was somehow funny after a couple of beers, I would give it over a star, but it's not. So I'm going to call this one, it's rotten. I think it should be like 5% rotten, not 24%. So anyway, it's brought to my attention, the 1995 Species movie, so I might do a rotten review of that. So it had its purpose. Again, don't pay $3.99 to see this on a streaming service. Only if you find this like in somebody's attic or something, go ahead and boot it up. Otherwise, just skip it, and I will see you again on the next Rotten Reviews.